June 16, 1993. The pristine concert hall at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. was filled with an atmosphere of mounting panic, as one of the most anticipated performances of the year appeared to be heading toward complete disaster. Just 3 hours before Prince was scheduled to perform for an audience that included diplomats, politicians, and some of the most influential cultural figures in America, the venue's legendary 1924 Steinway Model D grand piano, the same instrument that had been played by Leonard Bernstein, Vladimir Horowitz, and countless other musical luminaries, had suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure that left it completely unplayable. The piano's action mechanism had seized up during the afternoon sound check, leaving the keys unresponsive and producing only muffled, distorted sounds that bore no resemblance to the instrument's world-renowned tone and clarity. 3 of Washington's most experienced piano technicians had spent over 2 hours examining the problem, using every tool and technique in their professional arsenal, but they were forced to conclude that the piano would require days of intensive repair work and possibly replacement of several major components. When Prince arrived for his final rehearsal and was informed that the performance might need to be canceled or moved to a different venue, he simply walked over to the disabled instrument, knelt down beside it, and said quietly, "Let me take a look." What happened in the next 5 minutes would leave the assembled technicians, venue staff, and musicians questioning everything they thought they knew about musical instruments, mechanical expertise, and the mysterious depths of Prince's seemingly limitless talents. If you want to discover the hidden skills that made Prince one of the most remarkable and multi-talented artists in music history, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. What you're about to witness proves that true genius often reveals itself in the most unexpected ways. The Kennedy Center's Steinway Model D was far more than just a musical instrument. It was a piece of cultural history carefully maintained for nearly 70 years. The piano had been donated in 1971 and since then had been played by virtually every major classical pianist who performed in Washington. The instrument was known throughout the classical music world for its exceptional tone, perfect action response, and mechanical precision that came from decades of expert maintenance. The piano's sudden breakdown during Prince's soundcheck had been completely unexpected. During a routine run-through of Purple Rain, several keys began sticking, and within minutes the entire action mechanism had seized up. When the venue's house technician, 52-year-old Robert Harrison, examined the problem, he recognized this wasn't a simple adjustment. Something fundamental had gone wrong with the piano's internal mechanics. Robert had been working with pianos for over 30 years, having trained at the Piano Technicians Guild and worked as chief technician for several major venues before joining the Kennedy Center in 1987. He had encountered virtually every type of piano malfunction imaginable and prided himself on being able to diagnose and repair any issue with the venue's instruments. But the problem was unlike anything Robert had seen before. The action mechanism, the complex system of hammers, keys, and mechanical linkages that translates finger pressure into precise hammer strikes, had somehow become completely jammed. Individual keys would depress slightly, then stop, as if encountering an invisible barrier. The few notes that could be produced sounded muffled and distorted. That afternoon, 31-year-old classical pianist Maria Gonzalez had been scheduled to perform a brief opening set before Prince's main performance. Maria was a rising star, having recently won the Van Cliburn competition. She had specifically requested the Kennedy Center Steinway because of its legendary responsiveness and had spent weeks preparing with that particular instrument in mind. When Maria arrived for rehearsal and discovered the piano was unplayable, she was devastated. "I've never experienced anything like this," she told venue staff. "It's as if the piano has just stopped being a piano." The Kennedy Center immediately called in additional support, bringing in 2 more experienced technicians. Thomas Mitchell, a 45-year-old specialist who had worked for the National Symphony Orchestra, and Catherine Lopez, a 38-year-old technician trained in Germany, both spent considerable time examining the Steinway. All 3 technicians reached the same conclusion. The piano had suffered some internal mechanical failure, requiring extensive disassembly to repair. The action mechanism would need to be completely removed, examined component by component, and likely rebuilt from scratch, a repair normally taking several days. "I've never seen anything quite like this," Thomas admitted after spending over an hour trying various approaches. "The action feels locked in place, but I can't identify what's causing the blockage. We might need to remove the entire mechanism and rebuild it completely," Catherine agreed. "The piano will need to be taken out of service for at least a week, possibly longer depending on what we find inside the action." As word spread through the venue, panic began among event organizers. The performance had been planned for months, and tickets were sold with the understanding that Prince would perform on the venue's legendary Steinway. When Prince arrived at the venue around 4 p.m. for what was supposed to be his final rehearsal before the evening's performance, he was immediately briefed on the situation by the venue's artistic director and the chief technician. Prince listened quietly as Robert Harrison explained the technical problems and the unanimous conclusion that the piano would require extensive professional repair. "So you're telling me the piano just stopped working?" Prince asked, his tone more curious than concerned. "That's essentially correct," Robert replied. "The action mechanism has seized up completely. We've had 3 experienced technicians examine it, and we're all in agreement that this is a major internal failure that will require days of repair work." Prince walked over to the piano and sat down at the bench, pressing a few keys experimentally. The keys moved only slightly before encountering resistance, and the sounds they produced were indeed muffled and distorted, nothing like the clear, resonant tones that the Steinway was famous for producing. "Has anyone tried looking inside the action?" Prince asked. "We've examined everything that's accessible without major disassembly," Thomas Mitchell replied. "But to really get at the problem, we'd need to remove the action completely, and that's a job that requires specialized tools and several hours of careful work." Prince stood up from the bench and walked around to the side of the piano. "Would it be okay if I took a look? I've worked on pianos before, and sometimes fresh eyes can spot things that others might miss." The 3 technicians exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to this unexpected offer. Prince was known as a musical genius, but none of them were aware that he had any background in piano repair or mechanical work. The idea that a performing artist, even one as talented as Prince, could diagnose a problem that had stumped 3 professional technicians seemed unlikely. Before we reveal what Prince discovered that the experts had missed, I want to ask you something. Have you ever solved a problem by approaching it completely differently than the experts did? What made you see the solution that others couldn't find? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Robert Harrison, as the venue's chief technician, made the decision to allow Prince to examine the piano. "Of course, you're welcome to take a look," he said. "But please be careful. This is an extremely valuable and delicate instrument." Prince nodded and knelt down beside the piano, looking underneath the keyboard area where the action mechanism was housed. He spent several minutes examining the visible components, occasionally reaching in to gently touch or move various parts. The watching technicians were impressed by how systematically and carefully Prince approached the examination, showing obvious familiarity with piano construction and mechanics. "I think I might see the problem," Prince said after about 3 minutes of careful investigation. "There's something that doesn't look right with the hammer rail alignment." Thomas Mitchell knelt down beside Prince to look where he was pointing. "I examined that area pretty thoroughly," he said. "The hammer rail looked normal to me." "Look at this section here," Prince said, indicating a specific area within the action mechanism. "See how this component is sitting slightly higher than the others? I think something might have shifted and is causing the entire system to bind up." Catherine Lopez joined the examination, bringing a small flashlight to better illuminate the area Prince was indicating. As she looked more closely, she began to see what Prince was talking about. There was indeed a subtle difference in the positioning of one section of the mechanism compared to the others. "You might be right," she said slowly. "But even if that's the problem, adjusting the hammer rail alignment requires specialized tools and very precise measurements. It's not the kind of thing that can be done quickly or without proper equipment." Prince was already reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a small leather case containing what appeared to be a basic set of precision tools. "I always carry some basic instruments with me," he explained. "You never know when you might need to make adjustments during a performance." The technicians watched with growing amazement as Prince began working on the piano's internal mechanism with obvious skill and confidence. His movements were precise and purposeful, showing familiarity with piano construction that went far beyond what anyone would expect from a performing musician. "Where did you learn to do this?" Maria Gonzalez asked. "I've always been fascinated by how instruments work," Prince replied without looking up. "When I was young, I spent a lot of time taking things apart and putting them back together. Pianos are just mechanical systems, and if you understand the principles, you can usually figure out what's wrong." After about 4 minutes of careful adjustments, Prince asked Maria to try playing a few notes. She sat down and pressed several keys experimentally. To everyone's amazement, the keys responded normally, producing clear, resonant tones exactly like the legendary Steinway was supposed to sound. "That's incredible," Robert Harrison said, shaking his head in disbelief. "How did you know what to adjust? That was a problem that had all three of us completely stumped." Prince stood up and closed his tool case. "Sometimes when you're too close to a problem, you can't see the simple solution. I think what happened was that during the sound check, the vibrations shifted one of the hammer rail components, just enough to cause the binding. Once I repositioned it and tightened a few connections, everything went back to working normally." The three professional technicians spent several minutes examining Prince's work and testing different aspects of the piano's performance. Every key responded perfectly, the tone was clear and resonant, and the action felt exactly as it should for an instrument of this caliber. "This is remarkable," Catherine Lopez admitted. "I've been working on pianos for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone diagnose and fix a problem this complex so quickly and with such simple tools." The evening's performance proceeded flawlessly, with Prince playing the repaired Steinway with obvious appreciation for its restored tone and responsiveness. After the show, the technicians approached Prince backstage, fascinated to learn that he had been working on instruments since his teenage years, initially out of necessity because he couldn't afford professional repair services. "I've always believed that if you're going to use a tool, you should understand how it works," Prince explained. "Whether it's a guitar, a piano, or a recording console, knowing the mechanics helps you get the best performance out of the equipment." Robert Harrison was so impressed by Prince's diagnostic skills that he offered him a standing invitation to examine any problematic instruments at the venue. "You have instincts and insights that I've never encountered in 30 years of professional work," he told Prince. The story of Prince's 5-minute piano repair became legendary within both the music and piano technician communities. Professional technicians used it as an example of how fresh perspectives and intuitive problem-solving could sometimes succeed where systematic technical approaches failed. Music educators pointed to it as evidence that truly great musicians needed to understand their instruments at every level. The Kennedy Center Steinway continued to perform flawlessly for years after Prince's repair, with technicians often referring to his work as an example of perfect diagnostic technique and precise mechanical adjustment. For Prince himself, the incident reinforced his belief that artistic excellence required understanding every aspect of the creative process, from composition and performance to the mechanical realities that made musical expression possible. Today, the story is still told in piano technician training programs as an example of how mechanical problems can sometimes have simple solutions that aren't immediately obvious to experts focused on complex diagnostic procedures. It serves as a reminder that expertise comes in many forms, and that the most valuable problem solvers are often those who combine technical knowledge with creative intuition and the confidence to approach challenges from unexpected angles. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of Prince's most impressive displays of unexpected expertise. If this story inspired you to develop skills outside your main area of focus or to approach problems with greater confidence and creativity, please subscribe and share your own experiences of solving problems in unexpected ways in the comments below.